You may have played Mystery Date or one of many other dating board games when you were growing up. You might have married off your Barbie to your brother's G.I. Joe in a wedding marred only when your dog ran off with the groom at a crucial moment in the ceremony. But at some point in your childhood, you almost certainly played the card game called Old Maid, a staple of the nursery set for well over a century. Of course, you don't need to have special cards to play this simple game in which players draw and discard pairs of matching cards. In 1831, the American Girls Book described the rules of play with a standard deck, while a hatchet-faced character called an Old Maid showed up in an 1856 game called Yankee Notions. By 1900, however, the game as we remember it was available in a deck manufactured in Germany and sold in the United States as the jolly game of Old Maid. Playing Old Maid taught the same essential lessons as other girls' games based on the rituals of dating and marriage. That woman's appropriate role was as one half of a preferably state-sanctioned heterosexual union. The rules couldn't be any clearer. These date to the mid-20th century. Quote, "The game proceeds until all pairs are matched, leaving the Old Maid card in one player's hand. He is the loser," unquote. And that's right, he is the loser. No one wanted to get stuck with, let alone be, an old maid, the unwanted leftover after everything else had been paired off. Why choose the iconography of an older, unmarried woman? Spinsters had long been suspect characters in the culture at large. At roughly the same time that the jolly game of Old Maid was being played, Dr. George Nafis noted that, and I quote, "Common proverbs portray the spinster as peevish, selfish, given to queer fancies and unpleasant eccentricities." Nafis noted that often this characterization was untrue, but on the whole, quote, "the popular opinion must be granted to be correct," unquote. Visual depictions of the Old Maid and other female characters were equally unflattering. The Old Maid herself could be either plump, jolly, and elderly, in other words, sexually neuter and non-threatening, or horrific yet laughable, the love child of Olive Oyl and Don Knotts. One 1970s-era deck featured a dried-up shrewish pioneer called Fanny Flint, as well as a hotsy-totsy milkmaid honey called Molly Moo, and an artistic yet ditzy miss named Debbie Dab. Earlier decks had negative racial overtones. In the 1930s, one Old Maid deck included such African-American characters as Lily White, Jazbo Jackson, and Melon Moe. 20 years later, an Old Maid deck with a circus theme featured a dark-skinned wild man. In the early 1990s, two Chicago area women developed Old Bachelor, an updated version of the game featuring characters such as Josephine Judge, Consuelo Cardiologist, and Anne Archaeologist. The Old Bachelor himself looked a little like the Grinch with a comb-over, but the creators assured consumers that he was meant to be a figure of fun rather than a cruel caricature of the Old Maid. Of course, if you really want to be gender neutral, all you need to do is pull one card out of a plain old deck of playing cards and designate its mismatched partner whatever you want, the boo-boo, the double whammy, or maybe even the lucky card.